Welcome back. This is Cambridge Inside Out. We have a special edition today with a good guest. My name is Susana Segat. I'm your co-host.
And I'm Robert Winters, your other co-host.
And I'm the good guest, Rozann Kraus.
Are you a good witch or a bad witch?
It's a goody witch, but I am.
Witch, yes. So when we last met you so many minutes ago,
Way back in the first part of the program.
we were talking about safety and transportation. And we have one of our chief advocates of the city, Rozann Kraus, with us. And I think we were last speaking a little bit about bicycling, and we could talk some more about cycling, but let's talk more generally here. So I did initially, let's just say a word or two about cycling. If you were to sort of give like a short list of best advice to cyclists for how to be a responsible citizen in this great city, where might we begin that discussion?
They should drive.
They should drive.
Well, spend one day driving, one day walking.
Right.
What I say to people in general however they travel, is like assume that everyone else has had a worse day, is trying to get somewhere where they're later, and more of their life issues depend on their getting there on time, and they're already late.
I think that's great advice.
And assume that that all drivers are texting.
Well, they are.
A lot of them are. But
bicyclists and all pedestrians.
the point here being
Yes.
simply that you shouldn't make the assumption that everybody's alert and doing right, because there's a good chance that they're not, and you should always sort of, aim for personal safety and not live your life on assumptions.
I think that's great advice, Rozann.
It just, everybody else is having a worse day.
No, it's true.
And,
Right.
And when you do
give
that,
way.
it calms you down a little bit.
It does, and it lets you, okay, go ahead,
Right.
But it's a big jump for people to do that, because most of us, you're 16, you want to get your learner's permit, and it becomes.
This is a car you're talking about.
Yeah, in a car, right. Well, smoking or drinking. No. And it's like you think that this is your right, to drive. That this is coming to me. I deserve my own car. Whatever it is, this is a rite of passage, as opposed to a privilege, and a privilege with a huge responsibility. It's like
Right.
you are going to be inside a 2,000-pound vehicle of mass destruction.
There's actually, even in the judicial system, there's kind of a ridiculous notion there. You always hear these stories of somebody who's accused of, or really found guilty of drunken driving, and then after a short time they just give his license back, because after all, it's like your God-given right to be able to drive a motor
That's right.
vehicle.
You're entitled to do this.
Even if
Well, that you
hit
needed to get to
multiple
work.
Well, but other
That's
people.
usually the reason.
Well,
And you do need it to get to work a
Well,
lot
it
of
depends on
times.
your job, and sometimes you can change jobs. And sometimes maybe if a person cannot travel safely in a motor vehicle, maybe they should change jobs and move to some place in the neighborhood. Even if it's just flipping burgers, sorry, that's the price you pay for killing pedestrians
Well,
too.
why aren't
It's a tough crowd.
why
It is
aren't
a tough crowd.
all cars made with overrides for the ignition? Like it's sort of like how you had a fight for turn signals, for seat belts. It's like, why should any car start if there's alcohol? Not just somebody who's already been shown to be
Well, I mean,
an alcoholic. Like, how hard is that to put that in a car?
I think the cynic in me basically would say that you would
gosh.
develop a nice industry of people who are experts at disabling that system.
Hey, if you're sober enough to
Right.
to disable it, that gives you a leg up on somebody who can't disable
You hire
it.
the person to disable it.
Oh,
That reminds me
$5.
At the legislature, the State
Yeah.
House, they were trying to pass a bill that right now, if you drive without a safety belt, the
Right.
police can't stop you for that.
They have to stop you for
They
something
have to stop you
else,
for something else, and then they
they
get you for the safety belt.
Right.
So they were trying to pass a law that other states have that says if they catch you not using the safety belt, they can pull you over and ticket you.
Right,
And that didn't pass.
right. Well, I
So
mean,
everything is status quo.
but I think part of the reason, my recollection of sort of the thinking of the state
there's
legislature,
reasons for and
but there was a
against.
referendum question about this a number of years ago, and the public voted, and they didn't want it. So,
Yeah.
if the legislature say, well, to hell with them, we know best, that's not something the legislature usually does. They don't like to go against.
Isn't there a similar issue with motorcyclists wearing helmets? Or bicyclists wearing helmets.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Is there?
Right.
You don't have to wear a helmet
Yeah.
if you're a
I
motorcyclist?
think in Massachusetts you do, but not in all states.
Actually,
And here you don't have to wear a helmet when you bicycle.
if I may.
You may.
It is
The
your
thing
show.
is,
Take it away.
You know, a lot of times people talk about, there ought to be a law, and we need
Yeah.
to crack down on this and that and the other thing. But the truth is that if you're a pedestrian, a cyclist, a motor vehicle operator, your life is in your own hands. And laws or no laws, you just got to do the right thing to protect yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, there ought to be common sense, not
And
laws.
some common sense.
Well, and
For example,
Yes.
we do actually have some little visual aids here. And I'm going to just say here, when I was a young man and I was immortal, I could
Isn't
wear.
there a song with that?
Maybe there is, or there
Okay, I
should
got to
be.
check out the score again.
All right, okay. But back then, I would.
Something happened.
It would.
Oh no, I'm not going to report
Oh, we're
the
not
score.
winning anymore.
Uh-oh.
It's not tied.
No, we're not going to report this.
The United States is in the hole. Let's just.
There's
leave it
something
at that.
wrong with
All right.
the frequency here.
Anyway, when I was a young
It's not
immortal
over.
man, I would go bicycling
Belgium
wearing
won.
dark clothes in the middle of the night because nothing could harm me.
Great.
Not so anymore. So like every.
But wasn't that true, though? You weren't harmed.
I was.
That was the
not
law,
harmed.
wasn't it?
I don't know if
That
it
they
was. It
couldn't harm
wasn't
you? That was
because
the
I
law.
was a young man and who paid attention, right?
Well, when I was young and invincible in California and I rode a bicycle, you had to have the headlight on, you had to have the backlight on, you had to have everything. That was
That's
the
it.
law.
That's right.
And you wouldn't get on a bicycle if you didn't follow all the laws.
That's right.
What would
That's right.
happen? I mean, if you did it,
You just didn't.
There you go.
Right.
Well, it's changing the culture. I mean, that's
Well,
really what this is about. You change the culture of how
You're
people travel.
absolutely true.
You're not entitled to get anywhere anyway, but you're responsible.
Well,
when you do it.
Massachusetts, I think all of New England has a little bit of that old sort of Yankee mentality of like, well, don't
little
you
bit.
tell me what I ought to be doing like that. But I will tell you also that you will never find me out on a bicycle at night without front and back lights. And I'm stunned to this day when I see cyclists out at night who don't have front and back lights.
And you would never find me on a bicycle at night either.
I'm on a bike at night, but
With or without lights.
But what, I'm going to break some news to all cyclists is that motor vehicle operators don't actually want to hit you most of the time. No,
most of the time.
There's a few psychotics in the world in every aspect of life, I suppose. But so the thing is that do yourself a favor. You would they give these away at music festivals and anything else.
They do?
Get yourself a vest, something really bright, like bright orange or bright yellow, something that somebody's guaranteed to see you. Throw it on. It's lightweight. It's nothing. You can roll it up, stick it in your pocket, but it may just save your life. So just do it and shut up. Right? So,
Wow.
right.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back.
What was that?
No, I'm serious. The
Yes.
thing is, it's really true.
Yeah.
I'll say another thing too. So, and then I'll give control of the TV back to you, like in the outer limits. The
Well, I
other
want to
thing-
say something too.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
That's my
all right.
show too.
Okay.
me, I'm just the
All
guest.
right, let me just give you one more.
guest don't-
One
I
more.
haven't done-
And I'll tell you a
So keep
little
the two of
true
you
story.
separated.
No, this is very seriously. There was just not too many years ago. There was a poor fellow named Isaac. I think his name was Isaac Meyer, who stepped off a curb. He may have been his own fault, quite honestly. Been in the middle of Central Square, walked out, heading Western Ave toward Prospect Street. Walked out into the curb. A supermarket tractor trailer came by, just destroyed him. And now, whenever I step off a curb and I step into a crosswalk, every single time I look back to see if anybody's going to come here and make a turn into me, and I think of his name to this day.
boy. What's the story?
And the truth is, but every single day I walk about and I see people will simply just step out into crosswalks, assuming, or the worst thing you can say, well, it's my right of way.
Well, while texting, while talking on
While
the phone.
texting.
That's
Right.
the entitlement part.
Yeah.
I'm in a crosswalk. I have the right of way.
Right.
Well, you do. But the thing is, if you're
But you're
you don't have
also-
to- you're
yeah.
legal, but you might not. You still get in
being
trouble.
right is the very, he was right on your tombstone.
Yeah.
It doesn't really count. So, anyway, those are probably the things that get me probably worked up more than anything else. Is that level of
That's it.
kind of pedestrian and bicycle safety. Take care of yourself, for goodness sake. It's just
This
that
is a
simple.
good conversation for school vacation.
Yeah, it
We're
is
having
true.
this
Well, this
now.
is-
Yeah.
Well, one thing that pedestrians often aren't even aware of, pedestrians think, I'm in a crosswalk, I have the right of way. if there is in fact a traffic light, they have to obey the traffic light.
That's right.
It's like, why do you think there's a green for people going this way and you can just walk in the? I mean, it's
Right.
like. But some pedestrians don't know that.
Yeah, they think the truth is that you actually have more rights in an unsignalized crosswalk than you do in a signalized crosswalk.
Right.
Because if there's a signal there, you have to obey the signal. So just being in a crosswalk does not give you any special right. And if a motor vehicle crosses around here, well, as long as they, weren't doing it deliberately, then the pedestrian would be in the wrong.
And dead.
And possibly
Or hurt.
seriously injured. Yes, absolutely. So anyway, so those are a few
Those are very
of the many
sage advice here.
Yes.
Right. But it's true. We all have to live together. Motor vehicles, bicyclists. Actually, one thing that I find kind of curious in this sort of evolving infrastructure days where people are striping down bike lanes or putting other kind of facilities is that there's now actually more and more, it's almost like a return to the old days. There are vehicles now that are almost hybrid. There are cars that are smaller than bikes, it seems, like these little things that look like golf carts.
Yeah.
See them all over the place.
Smart cars.
And they're now more and more human-powered delivery vehicles and even pedicabs, where they're actually taking passengers and drones. Leave it to Susana to bring up.
Is that how you travel at night now?
Here we go.
I prefer it.
Your own personal drone. Do you wear a helmet?
No.
Okay.
Don't need one.
There you go.
There we go. But the truth is that so the city will install facilities under a presumption that cyclists are this wide, and then sure enough somebody comes by and they start traveling with a pedicab or something else which is a lot wider, right off the edge of the camera here.
Or the tricycles.
Or the tricycles here, so they're actually starting to become more and more like vehicles. Now I will tell you what my dream of the future is. My dream of the future is.
I'm worried about what his is.
No,
This
is a good future. Believe me.
Okay.
My future world is one where people get so sick of driving because either the gas is too expensive or it's just too erratic and annoying and whatever. So more and more people are out on bikes and whatever, working close. And the fact is that the street is actually dominated by cyclists. And motor vehicles are the ones that have to carefully weave through the crowds.
And as a pedestrian, I dread that day.
Right.
Well,
Can you imagine crossing the street when the majority are bicyclists?
There are a couple streets in Cambridge that
Keeps your reflexes.
Some people call them shared streets. There's actually, I think, a Dutch name called Woonerf, Woonerf. I think that's the correct spelling, which is a shared street. One example is Palmer Street, which is, by the way, I'm not suggesting that Memorial Drive become a shared street or
I-90, it is on Sundays.
where they start putting up hot dog stands along I-93. Okay, let's be clear.
Another good idea.
Frozen yogurt.
Frozen yogurt. But the thing is, there are a lot of streets that are more kind of tame streets where, in fact, they've actually done things like putting the street and the sidewalk at exactly the same level. That's actually what's going to happen over here on Blanche Street. Once they finish building the project for Millennium over here, just a block or so from now. Palmer Street, where Passim's is a shared street just like that right now. I believe Somerville has plans in Union Square to turn one stretch of one of the major roads there to a shared street where pedestrians, bicyclists, motor vehicles all have sort of equal footing on the street. And in some European countries, what they find is this sort of what you might think is chaos and insanity actually ends up being safer and more regulated.
More stable.
Well, that's why rotaries are safer than
I like
traffic
rotaries.
lights.
Yeah.
You have to pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in this sort of the ongoing. You don't want to know what just happened in the soccer game.
Well, I try not to interrupt you, Robert.
Okay.
For those of you watching live, Belgium 2, United States.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet.
For those of you who are watching this, not today.
We have. We need to put.
Stay tuned to this program because everything else is depressing.
America in decline.
No.
Well, no. I mean, listen. Maybe they'll do something dramatic. They're just sort of setting the stage for us here, right? Mm-hmm. Anyway, it'd be interesting to kind of see how it evolves. The city is experimenting with some new treatments for roads for mutual safety of pedestrians, cyclists, pedicabs, and whatever. I'm not a big fan of some of the treatments. I'm not a big fan of cycle tracks. Anybody who knows me knows I don't like separate facilities for bicycles except alongside high-speed roads. but that's me, and I won't. I'll leave it at that, right?
And you have this history of wearing dark clothes when you bicycle and no
When I
lights.
was a young, immortal man.
Immortal,
yes,
right.
Absolutely right. Absolutely true. All right.
As long as the pedestrians are paid attention to.
Well, there's a general.
And pedestrians have to pay attention also.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, there's a sort of.
But you're the one who's most likely to get hurt.
That's right. But it also is a general principle that the stronger should always yield to the weaker.
That's right.
So motor vehicles should always give full deference to not. Listen, if somebody's being a crazy cyclist, I mean,
Then you can hit.
No, you can't. But
Right.
but just in general.
Back to being immortal.
In general, motor vehicle yields to cyclists, cyclists yields to pedestrians. Big tough folks yield to people who are not as strong. And this is sort of the first principle of living together safely in a civilized fashion. So now,
I vote for that.
are there any particular places in this wonderful city that you would highlight as needing special attention in terms of pedestrian, bicycle, or motor vehicle safety? And that could be personal, like places that you feel afraid to go through.
Well, right now, all of West Cambridge, because
All of West Cambridge?
because they're doing sewer separation there,
construction.
and all the
Yeah.
construction,
Yeah.
and it's just
Well, driving there is dangerous.
well. Not only
Walking there is dangerous.
right, but what they do, I mean, they're doing an amazing job. But they pack up, at 3:00 in the afternoon, and
Yeah.
they cover the road service. But what they do is they make it safe for cars to go over,
Right.
and
They don't think they don't think the
metal
whole picture.
plates.
well, metal plates are not so bad because they say there's a metal plate, and it's not
Yeah.
cold out. But what happens is there's these big piles of gravel that
Yeah.
slowly get spread along the road,
Yeah.
and those are, well, they're, really dangerous to bike on, and they're not so good to walk on either. But it's just, so that sort of precipitously right now.
That's Concord Avenue in particular is
Really?
nightmarish, and that's actually a street where I just sort of shudder to think about that. That is the width of that street is such that I don't know how you maintain two-way motor vehicle traffic and cycling
parking.
safety and parking.
Right.
It's a tough
Obviously,
one.
you don't.
Well, I mean, I think you can, and maybe we'll see to some degree you can do it a little bit better, and maybe when it's all paved and recurbed and everything is all nice and wonderful, maybe everybody go, wow, that's great. But, I think it's really, especially, you can be a fast-moving cyclist who can kind of take care of yourself, but if you're not like, a racer out there, it's sort of a good idea to know the safe routes, too. And there are some roads that are just better than others. A person who's afraid, I love riding through Mass Ave and Central Square on a bike. I find it totally safe, but other people may not. So it's nice to know that Green Street is parallel and gets you one way, and you can go Bishop Bound and get other places too. So you have alternatives, and depending on your level of comfort, people should get to know the streets. So
I think that Mount Auburn Street going through Harvard Square is
that's a little erratic.
Good
There's
or
some-
bad?
bad.
There's some merging like right around.
There's a lot of merging,
Yeah.
and there's also a lot of random pedestrian jaywalking.
It's the unpredictability that's more dangerous
Right.
than anything.
And and I keep talking when I talk to pedestrians. It's like if you would always cross at a crosswalk, people would be prepared to stop.
Right.
They'd be sensitized to that. It would be like classical conditioning. The fact that people just walk out in between parked cars, or
Yep.
when they don't. It's like if we all just sort of become predictable, we will
Right. It's
learn to
easier.
respond that way.
Yeah.
I was going up Mount Auburn once on my bicycle, heading through Harvard Square toward MIT, and there was some construction going on at JFK Street, and there was a police officer there, and I have a green light, and the cars are going, and I'm and the pedestrians are like crossing,
Yeah.
every which way against the light, and I go over to the police officer and I say, I almost just hit 3 pedestrians. They're jaywalking. They have a red light. He goes, it's Harvard Square. And I said, seriously? I mean, I looked at him and said, that's your answer? It's Harvard Square.
Well, jaywalking is a finable offense in a lot of states. I don't even know if it's a finable offense in Massachusetts. It's just a bad practice.
Oh my
People
gosh.
shouldn't
I
do
think you get tasered.
You can take
It's like,
Oh, that would create a story. Can you imagine?
well, but people would pay attention.
Well, you heard it here. No,
If people were fined like $1,000 for jaywalking, it would stop. Like
Right.
after the first person, like it would just
Yeah.
never.
Well, equally, when a person puts their foot on the street, the car's supposed to stop.
they are supposed
They
to
are
stop.
supposed to-
Even
Stop.
though the person putting their foot on the street is wrong,
You know, this
the
is
car is supposed to stop.
well, yeah. Actually, there's some misunderstandings about that. I mean, certainly, if it's a crosswalk, pedestrian absolutely has right of way. It's a little gray, I think. Like if you were in California, pedestrian just sets foot on the road,
Thinks about it.
and
they
then
stop.
cars screech
They
to
have to
halt,
stop.
right?
Yes.
But that's not necessarily true here, and you sort of
Oh, we know it's
you'd
not
have to make the case that I didn't go over to the crosswalk because it was too far away, and the car should have stopped for me. But it's not a kind of an automatic here.
Okay, I have some good news.
Okay.
Yay!
Belgium 2, US 1.
Right.
We're not
See?
finished though.
We're on the way. We're on the way.
We're getting there.
We're getting there. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the U.S. is roaring back now, right?
We're not ending this show until the United States
Yes.
wins.
So
Well, that
We're gonna
may
sit in.
we're just
entirely true.
an occupation. We're staying here. So. You mentioned the term the gray area. There's actually
Yeah.
going to be an article in a couple of the local newspapers that I just wrote about the impossible grayness of cycling. And in fact, if you are a serious cyclist and you do know the laws and you obey them, there are times when the law isn't necessarily
Right.
obeying the law to the letter is not necessarily the safest way to bicycle. And
But let's not go too
let's
far
not-
down that road.
Right,
Right.
right.
I mean, I get these
I
arguments all the
myself
time.
got a ticket
Yeah.
for
What did you
occupying that
do?
little gray area.
She was dancing in the crosswalk.
I was dancing in the crosswalk, and the guy just didn't like the choreography. it was simple. Maybe it was the costume. I don't know, but it just wasn't in the mood. Bad music. Sorry, jail. You're out of here.
Don't you go blaming it on the music.
That's right. It wasn't. The music was perfect.
No, really, you got a ticket when you were riding your bike?
Yes.
That's possible?
Oh, it's very well. If you're, if someone says, "Oh, come on over here," I go.
Cyclists can get tickets?
Oh,
can.
cyclists are getting tickets a lot now.
Cambridge police have been ticketing cyclists for quite a while.
And this was actually in Somerville, or I really would have had an issue if it had been in Cambridge.
Yeah.
Because I started a nanosecond before the light turned green again. I mean, I had
Wow.
waited red, and could see that all the
that's
other
one of-
lights
It sounds-
were red, and then I got to start before the
Yeah.
cars did, which is the safest way to bicycle when you have multiple,
Yeah.
5 lanes of cars going every which way. Some people are making a right turn. I'm going straight. I want it to be not ambiguous. I'm on my bicycle and I'm going straight ahead of you.
Okay.
And most bicycles don't
complement.
even care about that.
As a cyclist,
Well, a
I
good
always
cyclist,
get out.
you
I
should.
get out in front of the motor vehicles, and I'll go right in front of a car or a bus. As they say, you're not going past me because I'm going to get out in that intersection first, and then
Right.
and they don't. Nobody complains.
No,
it's fine
because you're
they see
being
it's safer.
clear.
It's
You're being
safer.
predictable and clear. I mean, that's this.
And you stopped at the red.
I waited. I mean, the thing is, it's a really long line, and I waited the whole time. I mean, I said to him, I don't go through red lights.
Yeah.
And any other time I'd be waiting there, and bicyclists would pass me on both sides, going through the red light because
I
nobody's
think
coming.
he just needed to make an example of somebody that day, and you got to be
Well,
his
that's too bad.
example there.
Yeah.
No, I get into it all the time where the people who find justification for flagrant violation of laws as cyclists, not the kind of mild gray area here, but flagrant, just blowing through red lights. Well, why should I stop? I'm just a bicycle. And I tell people simply this, is that when you blow, as a cyclist, if you blow through that red light, you make me less safe.
Right.
Because
That's
the
right.
next car that comes along is going to see, and they're going to think those damn cyclists, and then they're going to
Absolutely.
be unnecessarily aggressive, and that makes me less safe. So I am offended by people
Oh,
who
I like
blow
that
through
peer
red lights.
pressure.
Yeah,
Well, but it's also you need to set a good example.
I say that all the time. Is
Like,
that when you're
I'm a cyclist,
Yeah.
and this is what I do.
we are ambassadors, every single one of us. When you go out on the street, you go out on the road, and you get on your
We're all
bike,
ambassadors here.
we're all ambassadors here. And the thing is that people are making judgments based on how we behave as pedestrians, as cyclists, as motor vehicle operators. And and if you just start blowing off the rules and whatever all the time, because well, who cares, right? leads to the downfall of civilization.
It's like the broken window syndrome.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's just like it.
All right, we only have a couple more minutes here, but I'm going to say one last
I thought we were
gripe.
staying until the U.S. won.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Still
I don't know if the
we're
powers that be
here.
will be okay with that.
No, we just
Here's
gotta
my
get
other gripe. This is
comfortable.
from motor vehicle operators. When
Yes.
you park your car,
Oh,
the law says you had better be within a foot of the curb, and
Oh,
you really ought to
something
be
happened.
even more. I just heard shout,
What?
so it's
Oh,
either
something happened.
something happened.
What didn't happen? Nothing happened.
nothing happened. Oh no,
Something
we,
very
we didn't.
exciting
Almost
we
happened.
didn't. We didn't tie the score.
It did not meet
So
the goal.
here's my I implore
This
everyone.
is interpretive,
Here we go.
listening to people.
So this is
There
auto
we go.
dance here. It's like,
I beseech all motor vehicle operators,
Yes.
please pull up to the curb, learn how to drive, park close to the
Park
curb,
close to
because
the
when
curb.
you park
That's
3
irritating.
feet away from the curb, you have narrowed the lane and made it so much less safe for, especially for novice cyclists who ride too
Yeah.
close to cars anyway.
It's irritating for drivers too.
It is very irritating because once one car parks too far out,
everyone goes-
everybody else can't. It's harder to get close to the curb then. So
And then when you open your door, it's really dangerous.
right. So please, people that work in traffic and parking, tag them. And
Oh,
those who are
right.
driving, don't do it. You know, it's
and can I add to that?
Yeah.
As you're about to pull into your parking space, can you use your turn signal so we know that actually you're maneuvering with your car somewhere, so that
That's
the
right.
bicyclist who might be following you knows that you're going to be
that's right.
This is
going into a
Turn
parking lot?
signals are a form
Yes.
of conversation, and we like conversation. We talk to each other. We say, "This is what I'm about
Or
to
we
do."
monopolize the conversation.
Well, I've been known to do that occasionally as well. But we do have 40 seconds, so feel free to take it over. You know.
I want you to know that Belgium is still 2-1 to the United States. So we leave you in suspense.
That's right.
And next week we will know the score.
All right, we
And
will
if
know-
you're
And this will be
watching this
history.
not live, you will know the score, and
That's right.
such is life.
It's close though, you can tell.
I
It is
think where the
getting
United
close.
States is going to end up winning.
Well, okay. I believe you, Susana. And on that delightful note, all right, we bid you adieu for another week. And this has been Cambridge Inside.
Out. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.